Today is Sunday, June 13th, and this is Headers and Footers, the brand new UEFA Euro 2020 show from the Toronto Star. I'm your host, Brendan Dunlop. A triple header Sunday that delivered plenty of storylines in the game of the tournament so far at the Johan Cruyff Arena in Amsterdam. Day 3, and we got maybe the best game of the tournament with the Netherlands down in Ukraine, 3-2 in the end. But what a match. I mean, the Dutch gave away a 2-0 lead, only to come back and win it 3-2. And what a roller coaster it was, no matter what side you were on. Very entertaining for the neutral. Now, England's Gareth Southgate, he may hold the title of having the toughest job in the world, yes, but Frank de Boer definitely holds the unwanted moniker of being maybe the most untrusted coach in the game of soccer. The Dutch want total football. They demand it because they invented it. Frank de Boer doesn't trust his side to play that way. He's tinkered, he's changed his tactics in his time on the job, he's angered Dutch supporters. Even his own brother, Ronald de Boer, came out and said that Johan Cruyff would be turning in his grave watching this team. What an indictment from your twin brother. More than a few Dutch journalists would have ripped up their headlines or were writing quite morbid headlines watching Holland blow that 2-0 lead in the second half with 2 Ukrainian goals in 4 minutes' time. Andrei Yarmolenko's goal to start that comeback for Ukraine, absolutely brilliant. The type of goal his coach, Andrei Shevchenko, used to score when he wore that number 7 shirt. But Denzel Dumfries saved the day for the Dutch in the 85th minute, heading home across from Man City defender Nathan Ake. Expectations for the Netherlands to deliver at an international tournament are always massive. This is their first time at an international tournament since Scarborough, Ontario-born Jonathan de Guzman led the Dutch out at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. 7 long years since we've seen those beautiful orange shirts. What a way to see them. Few were expecting really anything at all from North Macedonia in their first ever international tournament. But the debutants, they held their own against Austria. A 3-1 scoreline really flatters Austria, who finally win a match at a European championship. Austria's subs made the difference on the score sheet, yes, but David Alaba was the man of the match. You can see why Real Madrid, maybe, were so comfortable in rewarding him with a $480,000 a week new pay packet. Now, before I get to England's 1-0 win that kicked off a wild Sunday, the biggest news at Euro 2020 is Kristian Eriksen. Denmark's team doctor spoke at a press conference revealing that Eriksen suffered cardiac arrest on the pitch yesterday in Copenhagen.
He was gone, and we did cardiac resuscitation, and it was cardiac arrest. How close were we? I don't know. We got him back after one defib.
Still, such a terrifying sight that many won't block out of their mind anytime soon. Denmark coach Kasper Hjulmand also spoke at that presser and admitted that he didn't think they should have even played the game, that they shouldn't have finished it yesterday. I did feel uncomfortable. I said that here on Headers and Footers yesterday. There wasn't an ex-player on any television panel around the world or online, it seemed, that would have wanted to have played that game if they were in that room for either side. One more bit of news. We won't see Portugal until Tuesday when they open their tournament against Hungary, and we won't see João Cancelo at these Euros, as the Man City fullback has contracted COVID and was forced to leave the Portuguese team. So Manchester United right back Diogo Dalot, who spent last season on loan at AC Milan, has come into the Portuguese side to replace him. Let's talk England, shall we? My guest today is the brand new Vice President of Media and Content for the Canadian Premier League, and a face that all soccer fans know very well in this country, Mr. Kristian Jack. Welcome to Headers and Footers.
Great to be on with you, my friend. Great to talk some footy on this beautiful day.
Absolutely. I want to ask you about the new job. We'll talk a little Canadian soccer, but of course, let's start with Euro 2020 and the nation of your accent, England. So much pressure heading into this tournament with a real favorites tag. I mean, they often have the bookies favorites tag, but there's a lot of belief in the Three Lions squad. So what did you make of their opener and their opening win against Croatia?
I thought it was good as it could be, really. I don't know what you thought, mate, but I thought overall, you're never going to have comprehensive victories in Euros. This is a team that's never won a Euro opener. This is their 10th attempt that they've done that now. So I think you're always going to have nerves. I really like the way they started the game. I think with Croatia, you look at this team and you think, Modric, Brozovic, Kovacic are midfielders who can win the ball and dictate the play and tempo. And I think that England and Southgate, and I'm sure we're going to get to the lineup in a minute, but I think they got a lot of things spot on in terms of dictating their own tempo and controlling their own ball and possession, which is sometimes really difficult against Croatia. You can chase shadows a lot. They didn't do that. And I think the early start, even though they traipsed off at halftime thinking they probably should have been in the lead, I think it helped them. I think it got a little bit more confidence. It galvanized them and they felt a goal would come. they were the better team. And in the end, that goal came through Sterling, and I think they deserved it.
Well, at this time of year, these players are used to being on holiday in southern Portugal, and it looked and felt like they were playing in the Algarve from the look of the heat there at Wembley. Yeah, I definitely want to ask you about the lineup. I thought that it was surprising at first. The first name that stood out to me was Raheem Sterling, and maybe that's unfair on him. Obviously, he's a big favorite of Gareth Southgate's, but he's been under a lot of criticism, and I did wonder if maybe he would have looked to some of his other options. And how do you fit so many of the attacking young talent that he has in the squad? Would you see Jack Grealish? Would you see Jadon Sancho? To be honest, I didn't expect to see both of them, and I hope that we do get to see some more of Jack Grealish. But the first thing that stood out, and I'm sure it did to you as well, is seeing the fullback situation with Kyle Walker starting at right back and Kieran Trippier on the left side. What did you think of that when you first saw the team sheet?
I have to say I was delighted. I love Trippier more than most. I think he's a terrific defender, and he's a man that I think I can trust more as an England follower than I can any other left back in that team. I think he's played bigger games. He's been a brilliant defender for Atletico Madrid. I'm not a big fan of playing players out of position internationally. I think it happens too much, but I do think he is pretty comfortable playing there. He's played a lot of that before. It's not like his first time playing there for Southgate. So I didn't mind that at all. I think obviously with Shaw and, with Chilwell, you think, okay, they're established top class left backs in the Premier League. Why they're not getting their chance? I understand that, but I just think Trippier is a better defender. So I enjoyed that selection. And your point about Sterling, I really liked it too. For me, they've got to bring pace in the team. And as you saw on the goal, players who can make that runs through the central moments because, they want to be able to be quite fluid. Kane moves around. You need those players. The problem with not playing a player like that, say you went with a Foden and a Grealish, is that you get a lot of dictators, a lot of players that are trying to come in and create, but you don't get a lot of people running and stretching the line and getting beyond the defense. So I always thought it was going to be one of Sancho, Rashford, or Sterling. And I think, again, Trippier has been a loyal servant for Southgate. Sterling, a loyal servant for Southgate. And he picked them based on what they've done for England, not necessarily what they've done in the club shirt. And you've got to give the manager credit for that.
Anyone who follows each of us on Twitter would know the Aston Villa allegiance that comes through sometimes on social media. Do you think we're going to see much of Jack Grealish in this tournament?
I think he'll be on the field, of course. I think, in a game like today, I don't think, we saw him warming up in the second half at 0-0. I think he would have been put on. But in the end, when the game was 1-0, you start to put your succession plans in how you secure that victory. And I don't think Grealish would have been the man at 1-0. So I do think they'll play him. Grealish's biggest problem is Mason Mount. Mason Mount is a phenomenal player, and he has to play. He has to play over Grealish because of what he can do. He's so good at getting into spaces, in pockets of space, and opening up, stretching the line. And, he's just a different player who can really add that midfield superiority and play with a double pivot as well. And so if you play Grealish, he has to play in a front three. So then you play in a front three, who's going to not play if Grealish plays? Foden? And that's probably his direct replacement because, as I said before, you still need somebody with the speed and the ability to break the lines like a Sterling or a Sancho or a Rashford. So for me, I think he will play in the tournament. I think when you get to teams like the Czechs and the Scots a little bit with even more of a defensive low block than Croatia, you're going to need to find ways to try and break them open. And that might be where you need his panache and a little bit of skill and ability to take on players one-on-one.
I said on the previous show with Laura Armstrong that I thought Phil Foden could be England's most impactful player. Didn't have the biggest impact on the match today. We saw Mason Mount make some fantastic runs, and I agree with you that he's really going to be a tough person to unseat in that lineup for any of the other guys trying to take that spot. And newly crowned confidence as a Champions League winner, Mason Mount was very good. But the man of the match and the standout player to me was Calvin Phillips. Talked so much about how different a lot of these teams would have looked if this tournament was played when it was supposed to have been played last year. Calvin Phillips wouldn't have been in the side at all. And he looked like a England veteran with 50 caps under his belt.
Yeah, he was tremendous, wasn't he, Brendan? I agree with you. I think, when you look at the team, England, a lot of people focus on centre backs and Mings and Maguire if he's coming back there and Stones. I think a lot of people look at that midfield. Certainly I have over the last 5 years and thought that was pretty much their area of weakness. Do they have a true dictator? Do they have ability to be composed and calm in ball possession? I looked at the lineup today and I thought, okay, if they're playing Rice with him, and he plays a little bit the way that he plays for Leeds, it looks a little bit too safe and defensive for me. Mm-hmm. So I was so glad that he didn't play that way. I was so glad that he showed a little bit more of his ability that he played prior to getting under Bielsa. By the way, Bielsa's done a magic job with him. But to get away and become less of a 6 and more of an 8, to break those lines again. We saw it on the goal, the ability to go drive forward into space, put his head up and play that outstanding ball with his left foot through to Sterling. So yeah, he was a brilliant player today, and he deserved his place. I thought Bellingham might start, but I think again, another moment that Southgate got right and was proven so. And again, another example, I think I tweeted this today as well a little bit, that Phillips is a player that has evolved so much under Bielsa. And you look at this England team, there's so many players now, Brendan, playing under genuine world-class managers at the club level. You can go across the game and see what they're doing, and how Stones has evolved under Guardiola and Sterling and many others. And now here's Bielsa touching Phillips. And that's the key to success for England, because international game isn't as complicated, isn't as good as the higher standards that the top of club level can reach. So you shouldn't be overawed by it, but the pressure of playing for England can get to you, and that's where you've really got to let the talent take over. And I thought he was exceptional.
Great points about coaching. Talking about pressure, England are a side that always feel it, no matter how strong they seem to look on paper heading into a tournament. I often think about the England side that we covered for the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. England's real golden generation. It felt as though, they lost in the knockout stages before the tournament started. It was very difficult to see how the team would be able to progress. And we could talk forever about it if only there was goal line technology at that time in the match against Germany. But I look at this team, and obviously there's so much made about the generational differences. I truly believe that these players are not carrying the pressure of the past and the weight of the past. Some of them are, but some of these young ones, I think, are only thinking about their game and the match at hand, the task at hand, and they play with a real fearlessness that England really haven't had in the past.
It's a really good point. We'll get to Canada in a minute, but you can maybe draw comparisons to what the Canadian young players are doing right now with Alfonso and Jonathan, and trying to rewrite their own history, right? Understanding that there's been so many chapters of failure in the past, and frustration and upset for a national team, and saying, no, we're not going to be worried by that. I think Gareth Southgate plays an enormous part in that, by the way. I think his mentality is exceptional. His leadership qualities are brilliant as well. We will not be defined about what's happened in the past, of what people have said, how heavy that shirt can get. And I think he took a lot of pressure off the players in the World Cup. That being said, I still think that could be around the corner. I still think not necessarily a Scotland or a Czech Republic game, but a last 16 game at Wembley against one of the big teams from Group F, then suddenly that pressure is coming on. You alluded to some of the media pressure. Some of the line of questioning to Raheem Sterling after the game was, quite frankly, mind-boggling in terms of how people are asking, have you justified your place? No other nation in the world are going to ask, ridiculous questions like that. So I think the pressure could come, but so far so good.
Yeah, the criticism that Raheem Sterling gets has been debated, and really does seem quite unfair. I thought his reaction there really said a lot. The fact that he handled the next couple of questions in the interview, and if you're not reading between the lines, you wouldn't have known too much about that. He was too bothered about it. Although reading between the lines and making reference to the fact that why he wasn't scoring at club level was irrelevant, left me with wanting to know more about that, left me wanting to ask some questions about what's going on at Manchester City. But just your quick reaction to that.
Yeah, look, I think ultimately, Sterling is viewed very differently than some other people would be, and there are lots of different reasons for that. At the end of the day, he's a gem. He's a gem of a human who's done so much. Great to see him getting obviously in the Queen's list as well with the MBE. Not respected enough by a number of people who cover the game. A wonderful guy, and as I said, I thought he handled the questioning in a very professional way. At the end of the day, he's playing for arguably one of the greatest teams in the world in Manchester City. And yes, okay, form can come and go. That's what happens. But Manchester City, just because they didn't play him in a ton of games down the stretch, are not looking to sell Raheem Sterling. He's still at the prime of his career and will come back. And I think, you got to be understanding in professional sports that it isn't like a video game where you type in a number out of 100 and they consistently play at that level the entire time. There are ups and downs. And now, as he said in the interview, he's been really excited to get to the national team. There's the camaraderie, that family element of playing with your mates that international football can bring that club football can't sometimes. So, I thought he was class, and I think he needs to be that way going forward.
As a neutral, I'm very excited to watch England renew their long-standing rivalry with Scotland in their next match on Friday. 1872, the first time they played each other internationally. What do you expect to see from England against Scotland, and what do you want to see from England against Scotland?
Well, I think it's a lose-lose game in a way for England, because if they win the game, everyone will say, well, you should beat Scotland anyway. And if they don't win the game, then there's an enormous amount of pressure. I just think they have to understand that, believe in the process rather than the outcome. Could it go the wrong way? Could they have a difficult game? Absolutely. Scotland are coming in, depending on what happens in their first game, which is massive on Monday, by the way, for the Scots to not really bury themselves behind it, getting a loss. That would be a devastating blow to their chances of getting through. But I think, Scotland will come in and play the underdog card, and they love that. And it's a lot of pressure on England. But I think if England go out there and play the same way, then they should be fine, regardless of getting a win or not. I think this puts an enormous amount of confidence in them now. They've got that 3 points, and finishing first in the group is nice, but all for perception. But you just got to keep moving through. If you don't win the group and you get 5 points, and you draw the next 2 games, it's totally fine. You just got to keep working on the processes and not worry about the outcome. The result will take care of itself.
Player to watch for Scotland will be John McGinn. But of course, you knew that I was going to say that.
Oh boy, super John McGinn.
I did say off the beginning that you got a brand new job with the Canadian Premier League Season 3 kicking off on June 26th. We'll have Canadian soccer fans very excited, as did the win over Haiti in the first leg of their World Cup qualifier last night. What did you think of that performance away from home, and what might we see on Tuesday in the second leg of that tie?
Yeah, it's just a really exciting time right now, isn't it, for Canadian soccer? You mentioned Canadian Premier League finally getting away. It's been difficult for Canadians to have sport played in this country, so it's great that we're going out to the bubble in Winnipeg and they're hosting this wonderful start to this tournament. And you mentioned it, we're here talking about the Euros, international flavor and major tournaments, and I feel like more and more people are getting behind the men's team. We cannot really state anymore how massive this game is on Tuesday night. We'll be live on One Soccer at 8:30 because it's just enormous. The pregame show, we're talking about it. As you know, Brendan, if they beat Haiti over 2 legs, they're into the final round of knockout stages for the World Cup. They play in the final 8 against the Goliaths of this region, Costa Rica, Mexico, USA, so on. So they want to go out and play those teams. They feel like these young stars now, Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, Kyle Lara, many others, they want to be measured against those teams. So it's an opportunity for them to get through Haiti and then get into that 14 games over 5 international windows, stretching from September to March, to try and get into the top 4 to have a shot at making Qatar 2022. And as you know, World Cups are pretty special. And if this Canada team can get close or get into it, I think this country is going to fall in love with them.
I agree with you 100%. I'm very excited for Tuesday. And it's always great to chat with you. So thank you very much for coming on Headers and Footers, buddy.
Likewise, buddy. Keep up the great work. Big fan.
What an atmosphere it's going to be at Wembley on Friday. Now, Scotland can't afford to look that far ahead. I mean, look at the lines, and you can see that even the bookies don't know how their opener is going to play out on Monday. Robert Lewandowski will carry the hopes and dreams of an entire country on his very capable goal-scoring shoulders. That's the second match on Monday. And then we get our first look at Euro 2008 and 2012 winners Spain as they take on a Zlatan-less Sweden. Oh, how nice it would have been to have seen Ibra at this tournament. Wasn't meant to be. I talked about this match with James Sharman and Craig Forrest on Footy Prime, and both of them seem very enticed by the Swedish value. I don't know, but I am very interested to see how Luis Enrique sends out his Spanish side, one that does not even include a single Real Madrid player, if you can believe it. Thanks to Kristian Jack for joining me on today's show. On tomorrow's show, the Stars' Joe Callahan will jump on for the first time. Watch a brand new episode of Headers and Footers every night on the Toronto Stars YouTube page, and download the show wherever you get your podcasts. Until tomorrow, thanks for kicking it with us.